where it put in that, to create mastery, you have to have 10,000 hours of expertise. I also wrote a book about, I love Genghis Khan because, he's besides being a barbarian, which there's a little barbarian inside me, maybe inside you too. He was very civilized, erudite, and way ahead of his time in terms of how he thought about civilization and people and other things.
So what would you do if you woke up tomorrow and realized that you built a business that pays your bills but can't fund your grandkids' future? Well, today's guest has spent 4 decades solving that problem. So welcome back to The Root of All Success. I'm your host, The Real Jason Duncan, and this is episode 309. And my guest is Mark Murphy. He's the founder and CEO of Northeast Private Client Group. We're going to be referring to as NEPCG, just to keep it short. Forbes ranks him as the #1 financial security professional in New Jersey and the #1 nationwide. He's also the Amazon bestselling author of a book called The Ultimate Investment and the host of the Hero of the Hour podcast. So I know you're a podcast listener, so maybe you go and bookmark Hero of the Hour and you can listen to that too. Mark's mission, well, it's helping founders just like you turn today's revenue into multi-generational wealth. Mark, welcome to the show, my man.
Thank you so much. So happy to be here, Jason.
Glad you're here. So what's the biggest money myth that you still hear from 7- and 8-figure founders?
I think the biggest money myth is that you can create multi-generational wealth on a paycheck. That I think your money has to work while you sleep, and your business has to do the do has to create revenue without you doing the do.
That's right. I interestingly enough, I have a mentor who taught me that, there's 3 ways to make money. There's your active hours making money, other people's active hours making money, or money making money. And the one that you're just talking about is money making money. And I agree 100% with that. Well, take us back to 1985. What early client misstep permanently shaped how you now advise on wealth protection?
I think the #1 thing where if I had any regrets about that is that I was not stronger with clients, meaning that I allowed some people to steer the ship, and they weren't looking for a buddy, weren't looking for a friend. I'm their advisor. And I think early on, sometimes you'd be willing to say, hey, if that's the direction you want to go, I'm on board. Because I was a kid, I was 22, 23, 24 years old. And I think at this point, that's not my job. I'm not there to be their buddy, although many of our clients have become dear friends. I'm not there to, necessarily be their psychiatrist, although I wind up doing that pretty well, most of the time.
Yeah.
But, I want to be their key business strategist, critical thinker, and financial advisor. And sometimes, the most important thing is you have to ask them for permission to coach them. You have to, and sometimes you have to have some tough love. And I think in a way that they always know it comes from a place of caring and loving. But, it's not to tell them what they want to hear. It's to tell them what they need to know.
Yeah. Well, awards aside, and congratulations on the Forbes list is a big accomplishment, but awards aside, how do you decide whether a year for you was truly successful?
Well, I would tell you that the one thing I think is that when you start believing your own BS, Jason, the world has a way of telling you you're not all that. So, regardless of whatever awards or accolades or other things I get, is when I get home, my wife still tells me to take the garbage out. And I went into Starbucks this morning, told about all my awards, and they still charge me $6.50 for a cup of coffee. So, nobody cares. Maybe my mother cares, but that's about it.
So how do you decide what's successful when you get to the end of the year? It's not the awards. How do you determine what's successful for you?
I focus on 3 things. I focus on, first of all, I just wake up every day with the stuff that I can control. And the 3 things I can control is I wake up every day trying to figure out how many people I can help. The second thing I want to do is I want to create as much wealth and abundance in this world as possible, not just for myself, but for everybody I come in contact with. And then I think the third thing is I just want to have a lot of fun every day, meaning I just want to enjoy the people I'm with. I want to enjoy this conversation I'm having with you. I want to enjoy the next meeting I have. And I think if I can do all 3 things, the success always comes. Like I always think as a an ex-athlete, I always say that, you win most of the games in practice, not at the game time. It's you win the deals by preparing properly. And part of that is it's the one thing I can always control is my state and my emotional state. And so that's why one of our core values is emotional fitness.
I like that. That's very, very good. Well, let me dig in a little bit deeper, if I may. When you talk about creating wealth, not just for yourself but others, what do you mean by that?
Um, the fourth book that I have coming out, which I just finished, so it'll probably be out next year, is is for most folks, so few people actually create real wealth. And very few people out there are creating multi-generational wealth. And so I've laid out a book of our pyramid to create multi-generational wealth so that everybody has the opportunity to do that. And when I was younger, I used to think that multi-generational wealth was everything. And I still think it's very important. But I also think that, if your family hates you, if your wife hates you, if you're sick, if you're miserable in general, who cares all the wealth you have? And so I think it's not only creating multi-generational wealth, but I want to help people create a life by design where they go from one thing they love to something they love more to something they love more than that. And I want them to aspire to create a life that they not only never have to retire from, but I want to make sure they never even have to take a vacation from that life because it's so darn good.
Yeah. Well, describe for us a wealth strategy that your peers called risky, but you knew it was right. And then how did that pan out?
I think the for founders, I read a study, Jason, that said that 98% of entrepreneurs can never leverage and scale their business. And I first start by questioning whether they're really entrepreneurs.
Mm.
Most people that own a business think they're entrepreneurs, but they really just bought themselves a job. And it could be a very well-paying job, but it's a job. And so one of the things we try to do is help people get paid not for what they do, but for what they know. And I think that's a leap for many people because, a lot of people say follow your passion. I say follow your talent. And many people have followed that talent and they're very good at the do. But it's folks like us that can help them kind of take a step back and figure out how can you take this incredible gift that you have, this unique ability that you have, and then take that to be able to scale it in a place where you can get paid without you doing the do.
So, asset rich, cash poor founders face a lot of liquidity crunches. I'm sure you've experienced that. What's the, or what witnessed that rather? What's the first lever to pull, and which lever should they resist?
Well, first, I think at the very base, a lot of entrepreneurs forget protection first. Don't tell me your real estate's not in separate LLCs. Don't tell me you don't have umbrella liability policies or the right, property casualty insurance. Don't tell me you don't have any life or disability insurance. That kind of protection stuff. Don't tell me you don't have, all of your documents, your wills and trusts and agreements in place. I mean, protection first. But the second level, I think what you're getting at, Jason, is the number one reason why businesses fail, why people fail, or at the very least where they don't reach their um, full potential, is because of cash confidence. And I can tell you that I've created an awful lot of my wealth when I had cash and somebody else needed money. And the other thing is life doesn't go like this. Life goes like this. It's up and down, and you have good years and bad quarters and great quarters and those other things. And you also need to have cash confidence so that you can have a long-term business strategy and not have it interrupted because you have a bad quarter or a bad year. And so for both opportunities and emergencies, cash confidence is the second thing that I'd be looking at.
And you said earlier something about emotional fitness, and you stress emotional fitness around money. So, what daily or weekly habit keeps you from making emotional decisions?
I think, first of all, it's experience. I'm a very emotional person to start with. But I think that sometimes when you're dealing with people, money is never math, it's always psychological. Most things are psychological. And I think part of the issue is I'm not serving people well if I can't keep my state in a place where I can always or almost always, be emotionally fit and emotionally present to help them make right decisions. I can't take the bait when they get emotional. I can't stir people up so that they're not in a position where they can think properly. I think too many folks uh, use a strategy to disturb people or get them ginned up or try to bait them into places where they're making bad decisions. And I think it's exactly my role to be able to bring the temperature down, to kind of breathe through it and say, is this thing that you're all exercised about, if it's not going to matter in 5 years, why are we taking 5 minutes, worrying about it? Why are you ruining your day on this? Why are you picking a path of revenge rather than let that go? Karma will take care of that guy. Let's focus on our business and play our game and make sure we put all of our energy into something really productive.
Yeah, I like that. I like that perspective a lot. When you're talking about multi-generational wealth, of course, you're referring to heirs, people that are coming after us. So before any big transfer, what do you believe, what tough conversation should every entrepreneur have with their heirs?
Well, if you ever read the Williams study, which was a study of 3,200 highly affluent families, ultra high net worth families, by the end of the second generation, 70% of the time the wealth has been wiped out. And by the end of the third generation, 90% has been wiped out. And I don't think any of those families thought they'd be in the 90%. They all thought they'd be in the 10%. And I think part of it is making sure you're doing all of the things right, not to take the grittiness away from your children and your heirs. And what I mean by that is the temptation. And I think if I've made any mistakes, it's been that, I came up, I grew up dumb and broke in suffering New York. So I wanted my 5 kids to have some of the advantages that I didn't have. The other thing is that, when you grow up dumb and broke, you start to roll, as you start to make more money, you start to kind of roll with, let's call it, high class living, and so that's just how your family rolls. And I think that the mistake is to make sure that your kids know they've not earned that. They've benefited from that. But long term, what I try to tell my kids is, I've given you a great education. I've opened doors and given you some opportunities. But that's all you've gotten. You're going to have to drive the train through. Dad's not going to be here to make it happen for you. Dad's going to be here to give you an opportunity. Then it's up to you. And one of my favorite Eckhart Tolle lines is, when you realize that who you are is all you've got, then you could decide the kind of person you want to be. And I think that's the case for all of my kids. I think that's the case for everybody who's watching this podcast.
Let's talk robo advisors. Now, a lot of robo advisors out there promise DIY wealth tech. Why should a tech savvy founder still value a human advisor in 2025?
Because I don't think, as good as artificial intelligence is, it's never going to replace wisdom. Knowledge can be replaced, but wisdom can't be replaced. And ultimately, I've always believed, I've said this for 30 years, and this is for somebody who manages billions and billions of dollars. I've said money markets, CDs, IRAs, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, blah, blah, blah. Most of our clients have some or all those assets. Most of our clients will have some or all those assets all their life. But at best, they're inflation adjusted holding tanks. If Bill Gates was on this podcast today, Jason, he wouldn't say I'm worth $130 billion because of my 401k. True wealth is created in one of 3 areas. It's investing in your business or some other operating company. It's investing in real estate. It's financing deals. I'll leave out divorce and inheritance. That's the way it occurs. And I think the other piece that's there is that I think everybody has 2 lives. They have 2 businesses. And the first business is, I'll call it their cash flow business. So when you start out, you just have to make enough money to pay your bills. And then you get to another place where then you have to make enough money to support your lifestyle. You got to pay your mortgage. You got to pay your car payments. You got to pay your life. And a lot of people can get there. There's probably some people watching this podcast who haven't gotten there, and you want to help them get there in elegance and excellence. But for a lot of folks, they have a second business. And that business is, this is the business I wish I had business. And if you're going to see your future, it's going to be based on 2 things. It's going to be based on the guesses that you make, and then the bets you make in time and money to get there. So no robo-advisor is going to help you to get you enough information and strategy and ideas to make sure you have enough information to not only make the right guesses, to make the right bets, so you can not only have the cash flow business of your dream, but then elevate to the business and the life that you want to have. And so, I think I say bring on the robo advisors.
Today's episode is brought to you by Constant Closer, the AI sales agent that turns dormant email lists into revenue. I know we just talked about robo-advisors. There are certain things you don't want AI doing for you, but managing your email for outreach is probably one thing you want to look at. Constant Closer plugs into your email list, it studies your website, it studies your past messages, and it can write personalized one-to-one emails that feel human, and it warms your sender reputation so you can land in the primary inbox, and then it follows up until the lead buys, books, or bows out. Users report a 63% open rate and a 31% click-to-conversion rate, more than double typical drip campaigns. One creator even generated $11,000 in new sales on the very first send. So are you ready to put a tireless closer on duty? Well, you can start your free trial with Constant Closer at therealjasonduncan.com/constant closer. That's therealjasonduncan.com/constant closer. So let's go ahead and get back to the show here with Mark Murphy. So Mark, this is the root of all success. What is your one key to your success in life?
I don't really believe in competition, Jason. I believe in differentiation. And so in most businesses, you'll find people are networking. And I've never believed in networking because if everybody's taking that lane, why would I just be another guy that's out there networking? And what I describe as networking is I'm going out there to get you to become a client of our firm, or I'm out there trying to get something from you so that you'll go do business with us. And so I've never taken that path. What we've been is taught our team to become net weavers. And what I mean by net weaving is we're not looking to get something, we're looking to give something. We're looking to, through asking powerful questions and experience, being able to figure out how we can add more value than anybody else to somebody's life and how we can lead with our giving arm, which in many cases disarms the person because they're thinking, hey, what does this person want from me? And instead they're saying, oh my God, who is this person who's bringing these gifts and this abundance to me? And what I think happens over time is once they trust it, which some people trust it very quickly, some it takes them a little time to figure out, why am I the beneficiary of this largesse? But it helps you create, instead of transactional relationships, it helps you create transformational relationships so that when you pour into people, not for months or years, but sometimes for decades, you then have an army of people out there that want to make a difference in your life and want to help you. And so I think that networking is what everybody does. Net weaving is what people should be doing.
Interesting perspective, Mark. I like that. So, Mark, how do you personally define the word success?
One of these, I think a lot of people put it around monetary things. And I think money is important because I've never had a poor person give me a job. And, in fact, some of the people I despise the most are people that have enough because they have just enough for themselves and no more. Where I think one of the things is when you create great abundance, I look at it not because of the stuff you can buy, but about the people you can help. And so I find that people, I define it in a couple of ways. I define success not necessarily around money, although it's important, is has your chosen profession or vocation allowed you to make a difference in the lives of the people you touch? And are you great at what you do? Are you if you were a professor at a university and educating people and a thought leader in your field, and maybe you don't make a lot of money, but would that be great? Would that be successful? Or a nurse, to me, that's success if you're changing lives, or anything else. And I think sometimes our culture has made it too much about just the amount of dollars in your paycheck or the amount of money in your bank. And again, for somebody that helps people create multi-generational wealth, it may sound a little duplicitous or a little bit talking out of both sides of your mouth. But I also think that that people have to define it in their terms, not in your terms. So the idea is that it's in the eye of the beholder, because success for one person may not be the same as success. I think part of your job is help people get a definition of about what success looks like, and then help them get to that place. In fact, I'd say one of my superpowers is I get to see people where they are. I never see people through rose-colored glasses. You have to see them where they are. But my superpower is to see people at their highest potential. and believe in their ability to succeed so viscerally that they believe themselves.
Based on that definition of success, do you consider yourself successful?
Yes, I mean, I think it's one of those things. I mean, I think Dan Sullivan has this great thing, the gap in the gain. And they say if
Yeah.
you start here at the beginning, and this is ideal, and you made progress, how do you measure it from where you started, or do you measure it from where the ideal is? And so they say if you've made the same process either way, the people that measure it from the starting line find themselves happier than the people who are unhappy with success. And I find myself trying to celebrate the wins and kind of taking a step back and seeing how much we've accomplished. But at the same time, I'm never satisfied. I think there's always more. I mean, I think you're either learning or growing, or you're taking a step back. So, I'm a true believer that in life, your future always has to be bigger than your past.
Yeah.
But let's celebrate some wins along the way.
I love that. Um, what's your best piece of advice for entrepreneurs who are trying to build lasting wealth?
Mm. Wow, that is. By the first of all, that is a great question. But I think that what they have to realize is you're not growing a business; you're growing people. And so the idea is when people say, "Hey, my biggest expense is payroll or people," well, I've always said, if it's an expense, you should fire them. If it's an investment, let's pour into those people so that we've created a real organization and a real team. And then that's the beginning of a company that has legs, and as a company that can withstand your ability. If the business falls apart, if you as the CEO founder leaves, you're always vulnerable. You don't have a business, you've got a job.
I want to echo something that you said a few minutes ago. This is not part of my planned questions for you, but since you mentioned it, I want to dig in a little deeper. You said, and I'm going to loosely quote what you said, one of the types of people that you despise the most are people who think they have enough. And that is a sentiment that I agree with as you explained it. So I'm not coming at you as someone who disagrees with that. But how and why did you develop that? Because when I talk about me not liking people who think they have enough, because I look at it as selfish, I get a lot of pushback. And I think you and I would probably have a great conversation around this particular topic. So how did you develop that perspective?
Well, I want to lay down now because I need you to turn into a psychologist or a psychiatrist so I can lay on the couch and tell you about this. But it goes back to me to high school basketball, where I was very overweight. I was high school, got cut as a freshman, and I worked and I grew and I just kept working and working. And by the time I was a senior, first time I ever started a game was when I was a senior in high school. And for a guy who's 6'2" and got about a 3-inch vertical leap, I played. I got everything I could out of my ability. I was in the best physical shape I could be. I was a good, not a good. I was a good player, not a great player. But I had reached my full potential. There was nothing more I could do to be better with the amount of physical ability I had. I played with a guy who went in the NBA. I played guys who played professional sports, et cetera, et cetera. There were real athletes on that team. And so what that allowed me to do is I never compared myself to other people. I compared to myself to the best version of me. So if I figured I woke up every day and worked to be the best I could be, what it did, Jason, was really free me up to be the biggest cheerleader for everybody else. So if something good happened to me, Jason, I want something great to happen to you. If I've got $1 in my wallet, I hope you have $100. And so I could truly be happy and help other people by doing that. And it freed me to be the kind of person that I wanted to be. And I'm never covetous. I'm never jealous. I'm just, I'm the only question I ask myself have I done my best? Have I showed up? Is there anything else I left on the table or on the field that I could have done better? And if the answer is no, I'm very satisfied and I can move on. I can move on.
All right, I have a hypothetical question for you. If Congress wiped out every single tax advantage account tomorrow, how would you redesign a founder's plan to stay on track for multi-generational wealth?
Um, it's so interesting. I think that people too many times focus on the tools. It's almost like I'm not a great golfer, and so people say, it's almost like a tool, like a club. And so the way I envision it is you give me the best set of golf clubs and I'm still going to hit the ball in the woods a lot. But you give one of your favorite, you pick who your favorite, Jordan, who's your favorite golfer? Scotty Scheffler or whoever, I'm not sure, all the best golfer in the world. If you give Scotty a decent set of clubs, he's going to hit the ball a mile down the middle of the fairway with a decent set of clubs. You don't have the best clubs. So I think that when people put together their business plans or put together faulty business plans, it's based on a gimmick or a tax strategy or something like that. And I think that ultimately you've got to sit down and look at it through the prism of ikigai, the Japanese phrase that says, am I passionate about this? Am I good about it? Am I good at it? Does the world need that product or service? And can I get paid handsomely to do that? And it can't be a yes to 3 or 4 of them. It can't be a yes to all 4. It's got to be a hell yeah. And we want to put a business plan together around those 4, and then incorporate the tools or the advantages that you have, the access to workforce, the access to tax strategies, the access to capital, the access to those other things, which you can put it around. But the business isn't around there. It's no different than in Rocky 2, where Rocky looked at a condo and he said, "I think a radio would go over there." They're kind of doing things backwards.
All right, you ready for a rapid fire close?
Let's fire it up.
All right, favorite non-financial advice you give clients?
There's no right way to do the wrong thing.
Oh, I like that.
I think where you show up anywhere is where you show up everywhere.
Book.
And
go ahead. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Go ahead. I'm good.
All right. What about a book that most shaped your leadership style?
I think Malcolm Gladwell, Outliers.
Yeah.
Where it put in that to create mastery you have to have 10,000 hours of expertise, and that, I also wrote a book about. I love Genghis Khan because he's besides being a barbarian, which there's a little barbarian inside me, maybe inside you too. He was very civilized and erudite and way ahead of his time in terms of how he thought about civilization and people and other things. And I also like Freakonomics. So to me, I'm a voracious reader. So it's like, tell me which of my 5 kids do I like the best? Ask me which favorite book I've read. But I think if you want to see your future, Jason, it's the books you read and the people you hang out with. And it allows me anything will allow me to think differently about something that I thought before is an amazing book.
One habit that you're trying to break this year?
Why? How much time do you have, Jason? There's, I guess podcast isn't too long. I think it's just to make sure that I'm taking time for myself. I think sometimes, and that may sound a little bit selfish, but I think when you're somebody that is never satisfied, and there's always the next. And the next, you're on to the next. I think that sometimes that I'm trying to break that habit of not taking care of myself, making sure I'm getting exercise every day, making sure I'm getting the right food in my body, making sure that I get proper rest. I'm trying to break that habit of red-eye flights and 5 a.m. flights in the morning and red-eye flights on the way home.
All right. Well, right after, I'm going to let Mark tell us how to get in touch with him. I've got a JD's public service rant, so stick around for that. Mark, thank you for being on the show today. How can people get in touch with you? What's the best way to connect?
Well, we're in Florham Park, New Jersey. It's Northeast Private Client Group. And we would love to talk to people at northeastprivateclientgroup.com. If you have any questions or would love to follow up or get a copy of any one of my books, I'd be more than happy to send anyone a copy if they're interested.
All right. Well, we'll put all his contact information in the show notes, so make sure you check that out, whether you're watching this on YouTube, listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. But Mark, it's great to meet you. Such an honor to have you on the show. You and I have a lot in common. A lot of things you mentioned today, that there are things that you and I think a lot alike. We didn't talk about ikigai, but and enough, and some of the books you've read. So congratulations on all your success. And again, thank you for being on the show today.
It was my honor. Thank you, Jason.
All right, you know what time it is? It's time for another edition of JD's Public Service Rants. This is the part of the show where I call out the little things that shouldn't have to be said, but clearly they do. So if you're guilty of this one, well, consider yourself officially put on notice. We're going to talk about dog poop neglect. Yep. Bagging your dog's poop, hey man, that's only half the job. Those little blue or gray bags dangling from the tree branches or tossed out on the sidewalk, well, that's not eco-friendly art. It's laziness. You already did the messy part. Carry it the 10 more steps to the trash can. Your neighbors, the park crew, I would very much appreciate that. I see it every morning when I'm out walking on the trail, people that pick it up, bag it, and then just leave it. Every sneaker in town will thank you if you finish the job. And Fido can keep his good reputation. Well, that's it for today's JD's Public Service Rant. If you've got an idea for one of these, send it my way. And remember, don't be that guy. Well, that's it for today's edition of The Root of All Success. I have been your host, The Real Jason Duncan. It's an honor to have interviewed Mark Murphy. Please go check out the show notes, follow him, get a copy of his book, and go listen to his podcast where I will be a guest in the near future. So thank you for listening today. Make sure you tune in again next week when I will interview yet another very successful entrepreneur about his or her journey to success. Until then, as always, I am The Real Jason Duncan, and Jesus is King.
Attention business owners. Attention business owners. Feeling burnout from running your business? Uncertain if you're nearing burnout? Take our free 10-question business burnout test at businessburnouttest.com to discover where you stand. With just 10 quick questions, you'll learn how to immediately begin making changes to regain freedom and success. Cut your daily operations time in half. Improve your quality of life and prepare your business for your future exit without losing revenue or profit. Visit businessburnouttest.com now and take the test. Thank you for listening to another edition of The Root of All Success with the real Jason Duncan. If you've enjoyed this week's episode, visit therootofallsuccess.com to access the show notes and other helpful resources. Follow Jason on social media at The Real Jason Duncan. See you again next time here on The Root of All Success.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.